What leads someone to dress in white, travel to a remote island, and pay thousands of dollars to be in the presence of their idol? Is it faith? Devotion? Or is it the result of a carefully constructed psychological architecture designed to turn fans into followers? The line between an artist and a messianic leader can dissolve completely when charisma becomes a weapon of control. Welcome to The Truth, Dark Psychology. Today, we will dismantle the enigmatic persona of a Hollywood and rock star who has dangerously blurred that boundary. If you're fascinated by uncovering how worship can be manufactured and loyalty can be exploited, subscribe to the channel. Because we are about to enter a territory where fame merges with a cult. Jared Leto's public image is a masterpiece of self-deification. For years, he has cultivated an aesthetic that deliberately evokes religious iconography, with his long hair, beard, and an ethereal gaze, often compared to that of messianic figures. This is not a coincidence, but a strategy of psychological branding. By presenting himself not as a mere mortal, but as an archetype of transcendence and wisdom, he elevates his status from artist to that of a spiritual guide. This image is the foundation of his power, creating an aura of untouchability and depth that disarms skepticism and invites unconditional worship. This construction is reinforced by every aspect of his career. In his film roles, he is known for an immersive method of acting where he becomes the character, a process the media often portrays as a personal sacrifice for his art. This narrative of suffering and transformation feeds the myth of the tortured genius, someone who accesses planes of existence that we common people cannot. He isn't just acting, he is channeling something greater. This perception is a powerful tool for creating a psychological hierarchy between him and his audience, where he is the prophet and we are the congregation. The very language he and his band, 30 Seconds to Mars, uses laden with symbolism of unity, faith, and transcendence. The name of his fan club, the Echelon, suggests an elite group, a unit with a purpose. Songs with titles like Walk on Water and lyrics about epic battles, salvation, and rebirth transform rock shows into veritable ceremonies. This taps into a fundamental human need for belonging and finding greater meaning. He doesn't just offer music, he offers an identity and a cause to fight for. This messianic persona functions as an impenetrable shield. Any criticism of his actions, his music, or his behavior can be easily dismissed by his followers as an attack from non-believers who fail to understand the depth of his art or his message. He positions himself above worldly judgment, operating in a sphere of genius and spirituality that exempts him from normal rules. It is an extremely effective narrative control tactic, which isolates his community from external influences and reinforces emotional dependence on his figure. Analyzing this through the lens of dark psychology, we see the creation of an irrefutable frame. If he is a modern prophet, then his word is sacred and his intentions are pure, even if his actions seem questionable. He becomes the sole interpreter of his own truth, and his followers accept this interpretation because the alternative admitting the Messiah is a construct would destroy the foundation of the community and identity they so cherish. It's a cycle of mutual validation where blind worship becomes the only logical option, that no cult can exist without its devotees. And Jared Leto has been a master at architecting one of the most intense and organized fan communities in the world. The Echelon, the name itself establishes a power dynamic. Echelon refers to a level or rank in an organization, implying that being a fan is more than liking music. It's being part of a structure, an army united by a cause. This nomenclature militarizes devotion, turning passive affection into an active duty. The fans don't just listen, they serve. The creation of this community exploits the intrinsic desire to belong. In an increasingly fragmented world, Leto offered a home. He gave his fans a name, symbols, the glyphs, a purpose to spread the band's word, and a common enemy, the skeptical music industry, the critics. This us versus them structure is a cornerstone of group psychology. It strengthens internal bonds by creating an external adversary, making each member feel part of an exclusive family, misunderstood by the rest of the world, which enhances cohesion and loyalty to the leader. Leto's interaction with the echelon is calculated to feel intimate and personal, despite being on a mass scale. He invites fans on stage, holds exclusive meet and greets, and uses social media to create an illusion of direct access. This intermittent reinforcement of attention makes fans feel special, seen, and chosen by the leader. Psychologically, it works like a slot machine. You never know when you'll receive the reward, a glance, a touch, a retweet, so you keep investing your time, energy, and emotion in the hope of being the next one noticed. Within this architecture, strong pressure to conform emerges. To be a true member of the echelon, you are expected to defend the band unconditionally, buy all merchandise, and actively participate in promotion. Any deviation or criticism can lead to ostracism by the community itself. Control, therefore, doesn't just come from the leader. It's maintained by the followers themselves, who police one another to ensure the purity of devotion. It's a system of mutual surveillance, disguised as shared passion. The end result is a community where individual identity can merge with the group's identity. Being part of the echelon becomes a defining characteristic of a fan's life. This fusion is dangerous, as the individual's emotional well-being becomes directly dependent on the success and approval of the leader and the group. Devotion ceases to be a choice and becomes a necessity, and the structure that once offered comfort and belonging transforms into a gilded cage from which it is psychologically difficult to escape. The Mars Island event is the physical and most extreme manifestation of Jared Leto's personality cult. This is where metaphor becomes reality. The followers, dressed in white as if in a purification ritual, pay exorbitant amounts to live out a 3-day fantasy on a Croatian island, with their leader at the center of it all. The requirement of white attire is not just aesthetic. It's a psychological technique to erase individuality and reinforce the group's unity. All are equal, all are pure, all are there for the same reason, to worship. The business model behind Mars Island is a lesson in value manipulation. Packages costing upwards of $6,000 are offered, promising different levels of intimacy and access to Leto. This creates a hierarchy of devotion based on purchasing power. Spiritual salvation, or proximity to the Messiah, has a price. This exploits a psychological principle known as effort justification. The more you pay in money, time, or emotion for something, the more you need to believe it has value to justify your investment. No one wants to admit they spent a fortune on an empty experience. The activities offered on Mars Island, such as yoga, meditation, and intimate concerts, are all designed to induce a state of heightened suggestibility. In an isolated environment, away from their normal routines and influences, participants are immersed in an atmosphere of forced positivity and collective ecstasy. This love-bombing and peak emotional experiences can create a sense of euphoria and transcendence, which the brain directly associates with the figure of the leader. Leto is not just the host. He is the source of that happiness. The band and Leto themselves openly joke about the idea that Mars Island is a cult, using the hashtag yes, this is a cult. This is a masterstroke of reverse psychology. By admitting the accusation ironically, they neutralize it and turn it into an inside joke. The followers feel in on the secret, laughing along with the leader, while the actual mechanics of the cult operate in plain sight. Those who criticize from the outside are seen as humorless, unable to get the joke, which further strengthens the barrier between the group and the outside world. At its core, Mars Island represents the commodification of faith. It's the promise of a transformative spiritual experience packaged and sold as a luxury product. The followers aren't just buying tickets to a festival. They are buying the illusion of belonging, of enlightenment, and of proximity to their God. It is the logical conclusion of a years-long strategy to turn admiration into devotion, and devotion into a commercial transaction where the soul is the final product, the core of Jared. Leto's psychology appears to be a deep and unshakable narcissism, where his entire public existence is a performance dedicated to the worship of his own image. His famous physical transformations for film roles, though praised as a sign of dedication, can also be seen as an exercise in self-glorification. Each drastic change in weight or appearance generates a wave of publicity focused on him, on his sacrifice, on his art. The film becomes secondary to the narrative of his personal metamorphosis. This worship of his own image extends to his musical persona. On stage, he is not just a vocalist. He is a messianic figure offering himself up for the crowd's adoration. The way he moves, how he stares at the camera, and how he absorbs the fans' energy reveals a dynamic of narcissistic mirroring. He needs the audience's worship to validate his own grandeur, and the audience in turn feels a glimpse of that grandeur by worshiping him. It's a symbiotic relationship where the self-esteem of both sides is artificially inflated. The very visual aesthetic of his band and projects is obsessed with his image. Music videos, promotional photos, and social media posts often center him in an iconic, almost divine manner. He is not afraid to compare himself to historical or religious figures, understanding that the repetition of a powerful image eventually makes it a truth in the public's mind. He didn't just build a persona. He fell in love with it and demands that the world do the same, treating anything less than adoration as a personal offense. This behavior may be a defense mechanism against a deep-seated insecurity. The narcissist constructs a facade of perfection and superiority to protect a fragile ego. The constant need for external validation, the intolerance of criticism, and the creation of a universe where he is the center of everything are classic symptoms. The persona of the misunderstood genius or spiritual leader is the perfect armor for someone who, perhaps, fears being seen as ordinary or flawed. The danger of this self-worship is that it erases the line between the person and the persona. It is believed that Leto may have gotten lost within his own creation. He is no longer playing a role. He is the Messiah of Mars. For his followers, this makes him even more authentic and powerful. For psychological analysis, it makes him an isolated figure, trapped in a cycle of self-deception, where the only real connection he can have is with the reflection of himself in the eyes of his worshippers. A quick pause in our descent. If this analysis is making you question the nature of fame and worship, show your support with a like. And if you believe the truth needs to be exposed, subscribe to The Truth, Dark Psychology. We want to hear your opinion. Do you think artists have the right to create these realities for their fans? Comment below and suggest other figures we should put under our microscope. Now let's dive into the darkest part of this story. Participation in Jared Leto's universe comes at a cost. And it is not just financial. The first price, of course, is monetary. The selling of VIP packages, exclusive merchandise, and paid experiences creates a caste system within the fan base. The implicit message is clear. Your devotion is measured by your ability to spend. This turns the fandom into a consumer club, where status is bought and loyalty is constantly tested by new opportunities to spend more. The spiritual salvation offered by this modern Messiah is not for everyone. It's for those who can afford it. The second cost is emotional. By joining such an intense and isolated group, followers invest an immense amount of their identity and emotional well-being in the figure of Leto and the Echelon community. Their happiness can become dependent on the band's highs and lows or the leader's recognition. This dependency is a form of psychological control. When your self-esteem is tied to an external source, you become vulnerable to manipulation, always. Seeking the approval that keeps you emotionally stable. The third cost is that of cognitive dissonance. To remain within the personality cult, followers often need to ignore or rationalize the leader's problematic behaviors. This can range from arrogant attitudes and controversial statements to more serious accusations. To protect their emotional investment and their identity as a fan, the brain creates justifications. The media is lying. People don't understand him. It's just part of his art. This process of self-deception is mentally exhausting and distances the individual from objective reality. There's also the opportunity cost. The time and energy dedicated to promoting the band, policing other fans, and immersing oneself in this universe could be used in other areas of life. Fandom becomes unpaid labor, where the only reward is the feeling of belonging to something supposedly grand. The leader benefits from the free labor of thousands of devotees, who act as his marketing army, while their own lives may stagnate under the weight of this total devotion. Finally, the highest price is the loss of critical thinking. The cult's structures designed to discourage questioning and promote blind acceptance. The leader's voice becomes the truth, and group pressure silences any internal doubt. By giving up their ability to judge for themselves, the follower surrenders their power and their autonomy. The salvation promised by this fantasy world comes at the cost of becoming a puppet, even if it is a happy puppet dressed in white. When an individual achieves messianic status, with legions of followers willing to do anything for him, the potential for abuse of power becomes immense. The same charisma that inspires devotion can be used to exploit vulnerability. The recent and serious allegations of sexual misconduct against Jared Leto, some involving minors, cast a dark and terrifying light on his entire persona. The figure of the spiritual prophet, if the allegations are true, may have been the perfect mask to hide a predator. The cult-like environment he cultivated for years creates the ideal conditions for such abuses to occur and remain secret. An ecosystem where the leader is seen as infallible and divine. Victims are often silenced or discredited by the community itself. To question the Messiah is heresy. The victim may even blame themselves, thinking they misinterpreted the pure intentions of the leader. The psychological power vested in him is so great that it distorts the perception of reality, especially for young and impressionable fans. The manipulation tactics used to build the fan clubs, such as creating a sense of exclusivity and special access, are frighteningly similar to the grooming techniques used by predators. The promise of special attention from the idol, invitations to private parties, or direct communication can be used to isolate a target and break down their barriers. The victim, feeling like the chosen one, can be easily manipulated into dangerous situations, all under the guise of a unique fan experience. Narcissism and the need for constant adoration also play a crucial role here. For a narcissistic personality, other people exist as objects to satisfy their needs, be they for validation, entertainment, or sexual gratification. Empathy is non-existent. Therefore, a fan's well-being and age become irrelevant in the face of the leader's desire. The followers are not seen as human beings with their own boundaries, but as resources to be consumed. If the accusations prove true, they represent the most tragic and dark consequence of Leto's personality cult. They reveal how image worship, spiritual manipulation, and the creation of an alternate reality are not just harmless psychological games. They can be tools to create a hunting ground, where absolute power corrupts absolutely, and the price of salvation is the innocence and safety of those who most believed in the prophet. What, then, will be Jared Leto's legacy? Will he be remembered as the chameleon artist, the musician who inspired millions, or as a case study on the dangers of narcissism and mass manipulation? The answer will likely be a dark fusion of both. His story serves as a powerful cautionary tale for the age of digital celebrity, where the line between fan and follower, between admiration and worship, has become dangerously blurred. The primary psychological lesson from his trajectory is the fragility of identity in the modern era. He offered a complete identity package, a name, symbols, a community, a purpose to people who felt lost. This reveals a collective hunger for meaning that can make us vulnerable to charismatic leaders who promise to fill that void. Leto's story teaches us that when we seek our identity in an external figure, we risk becoming merely an extension of that person's will. His legacy is also a commentary on the nature of power. He demonstrated, step by step, how to build a psychological empire. It began with the image, was solidified with the community, monetized with exclusive experiences, and allegedly exploited at the darkest levels. He is an extreme example of how charisma, without the anchor of ethics and empathy, can morph into a destructive force. The power his fans gave him did not ennoble him. It appears to have corrupted him. This story forces us to confront our own complicity in the creation of monsters. The culture of celebrity worship, which elevates flawed mortals to the status of gods, creates the environment for the abuse of power to flourish. We build the pedestals, and then we are shocked when the statues fall and break. Leto's legacy may be a call for a healthier form of fandom, based on critical appreciation instead of blind devotion, and on holding our idols accountable instead of defending them at any cost. Asterisk in the end. The cult of Jared Leto is a mirror that reflects the darkest parts not only of him, but of our culture. It reflects our need to believe, our desire to belong, and our dangerous tendency to hand over our power to figures who seem larger than life. The god of Mars may be falling, but the lesson he leaves is eternal. When you follow a man as if he were a god, you risk being sacrificed on his altar. The truth behind the image is often uncomfortable. If you have the courage to keep looking into the shadows, then subscribe now to The Truth, Dark Psychology. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one of our deep analyses. The most important discussion happens now in the comments. What does this story reveal about fan culture today? Have you ever felt part of something that demanded blind loyalty? Share your perspective. Until next time, and remember, worship can be the most subtle form of control.